I have seen it. I have finally seen what gave the very gods pause, that which, through its calling, brought about the destruction of our ancestors. I have seen the end of the world. They called it Pandorym. Dear readers, accept once more the tireless service of Volatham Gadarum, who has trudged sands that would saute a lesser man's toes, and spelunked vaults where the shadows in the cold, damp corners owe me a coin or three. What follows is a sober, yet stylish account of Pandorym, an elder evil lured by the Imaskari to be their final argument against gods, then sundered, shelved, and, praise prudence, never fully uncorked. In -2,489 DR, the deities of the Mulan slaves outfoxed Imaskar's planar barricades by sending manifestations, great avatars led by ancient Ptah, across the void to Toril. Those powers then divided their remaining essences into incarnations, mortal-seeming vessels that walked the Imaskari plains, raised priests from the talented, and forged divine minions from the truly faithful. The result was, as you expect when bright gods meet dark masters, the slaves revolted. Foreseeing divine reprisal, the Imaskari conceived a deterrent of exquisite folly. They lured Pandorym, a sentient, reality-eating weapon, to Faerun as a doomsday balance against the wrath of the Mulan gods. And as you have most likely devised, it didn't save them. In -2,488 DR, Horus slew Lord Artificer Yuvaraj, Emperor of Imaskar. Inupris fell, and the Rarin Desert took root where the empire had stood. Ra, Enlil, and others did what gods do when pushed past patience. In the chaos, curiosities endured. Lord Hilatha tucked himself into a temporal stasis vault deep beneath the western mountains. Lord Ilthaman fled below into the Underdark, with his kin hoping to escape the fall of the Imaskar Empire and the wrathful Mulan slave armies, seeding the hidden realm that would become Deep Imaskar. Because Pandorym was too perilous even for its Imaskar purchasers, the Imaskari separated its body from its mind. Both were secured within the celestial nadir, a bespoke demiplane first devised as a buffer between portals, later expanded into a dumping ground for failed wonders, hazards, and temporarily misplaced treasures. In time, perhaps by absorption of other demi-realities, the nadir became an endless void threaded with unsupported stone roads, free-floating lakes, and islands bearing crumbled ruins. Some ruins glowed with stubborn sourceless illumination, the nadir's false stars. Through this void drifted imperial tombs, mirror-perfect cubes, and glass slabs with monsters frozen in stasis prisons. Within that museum of hubris, Pandorym's psyche was bound in the imperial weapon cache, housed in the palace of the Purple Emperor, itself shifted whole into the nadir, while its body lay moored elsewhere within the plane, far enough that mine could not meld once again with its previous body. The Imaskari never dared deploy their pet apocalypse once more. Then the gods ended the argument for them. Millennia passed. In 1370 DR, Pandorym's psyche found leverage, partly freeing itself and whispering through compliant minds, notably among the folk of Vailen. 4 years later, in 1374 DR, Pandorym struck at Deep Imaskar, hungering for vengeance on the last living heirs of its jailers. On Tarsak 19, 1374 DR, matters came to a hinge. A company most worthy of their ink, Ususi Manalin, Ian Koilor, Warian Datharathi, Kirill Duskmorn, and Prince Monolith, laboured mightily and kept body and mind sundered. Psyche pinned in the palace of the Purple Emperor, flesh corralled elsewhere in the celestial nadir. The locks held, as the Underdark briefly held its breath. Rumours circled that a sorrow and longing for freedom echoed for decades from the celestial nadir, with Pandorym ever reaching for freedom from its crystalline prison. Dearest readers, One final note for your ears only from an arcane investigator I met in Sorcerer's Sundries. When it comes to Pandorym, they brought it. They brought it and trapped it, though many gave their lives to do so. They brought it to threaten the gods, which they did. And the gods responded. But the evil remains, imprisoned, biding, planning, seething. The material plane represents only one small part of the multiverse. Beyond the best-known planes of existence lie realms that are lethal to mortal life. Some are so hostile that even a moment's contact with such a place is enough to plunge a mortal mind into madness. Yet, beings do exist that are native to these realms. Beings that are eternally hungering, searching, warring, sometimes dreaming. These elder evils are far older than most of the mortal races, and always horrific to humanoid minds. However much they might desire to enter and dominate the material plane, the elder evils are unable or unwilling to leave their realms. Some are imprisoned in their dimensions by external forces. Some are inextricably bound to their home realities, and others simply can't find any way out. Lured to the material plane by an ancient civilization, with most tomes referencing the Imaskar, who were hoping to protect themselves from the vengeance of deities, Pandorym personifies the emotionless void of utter annihilation. It was imprisoned by its summoners millennia ago as a deterrent, but never released. Now, hidden in a forgotten prison, the god-slaying weapon awaits the arrival of a being powerful enough to reunite its unfathomable mind with its potent body. Pandorym seeks freedom, and with it, mass deicide. Long ago, a cabal of foolish wizards violated the laws of the multiverse in their search for ever greater power, discovering spaces between the planes that should never have been breached. Their arrogance angered the deities, who jealously coveted this knowledge to defend themselves and, incidentally, their people. The Cabal members sought a weapon with which to threaten the gods. The wizards bent their wills toward a quasi-reality best described as perpendicular to that of the Great Wheel. Most recent scholars label this as the Far Realm. Although these accounts are as of yet unverified, the dark enticement was great from these wizards. Of the chance to slay deities called to the material plane, a sentient singularity of scarcely fathomable power and unrelenting destructiveness. Given the name Pandorym by its summoners, it sought greedily to fulfill the terms of its contract, but was instead imprisoned. Knowing they couldn't hold Pandorym's full might with magic, mortal or divine, they cleaved its alien psyche from its body, trapping the former in a crystal prison beneath their city, and the latter in a trans-dimensional space that touches the multiverse at only one point. In their hubris, those who brought Pandorym called on the deities aligned against them, revealing only a hint of their weapon's unbelievable destructiveness. The wizards believed such a display would force the gods to relent. Instead, the deities struck first. What would stop a single member of that insolent cabal from being consumed by madness and reuniting the halves of Pandorym? Thus, before the cabal could consolidate its position, the gods blotted every trace of it from the world. Ancient deities who remember that fearful time occasionally speak to their modern clerics of their decision, striking fear into the hearts of their followers. Having wiped out the wizards and their civilization, the gods could not undo what the cabal had achieved. Thus, they were forced to hide away Pandorym in its dual prisons and erase all known records of the thing's existence. Nevertheless, tales persist of the weapon that kills gods, and they hint at its location. Despite the seals that hold its mind within the crystalline prison, Pandorym remains conscious and aware of its surroundings. Deathless and bored, it eagerly latches onto the psyche of any sentient creature that wanders too close, attempting to reunite its mind and body. But these mortal pawns are too fragile to endure its control. To its eternal frustration, the crushing power of its mind breaks its servants long before they can perform any helpful action. Until, that is, very recently. Pandorym seeks, above all else, the reunion of its potent mind with its unstoppable form. From those whose minds held up, at least for a time, to the impossible might of its psyche, the terrible weapon has learned of the destruction of its betrayers. It suspects that descendants might yet exist of those who lured and snared it, and once it achieves freedom, Pandorym will seek revenge on those innocents for the crimes of their ancestors. After it slakes its thirst for vengeance, Pandorym intends to complete its end of the bargain it struck millennia ago. Although Pandorym's summoners didn't respect that binding covenant, the quasi-living weapon possesses an unremitting sense of honor. It will fulfill its contract by obliterating every deity it finds in this reality. It knows that gods can't easily die, but it plans to rip them from existence. Once it has finished these tasks, Pandorym will return to its home reality, if it can. If it is prevented from leaving the multiverse, whether through a conscious act or because the rift created to summon it cannot be remade, Pandorym will end the material plane, one world at a time. The ancient Imaskaran Empire brought Pandorym to Faerun to prevent the deities from seeking vengeance for the Imaskari's genocide. Before they could use their weapon, though, the gods laid low the whole empire. Pandorym remains to this day, its mind entrapped within the imperial weapon cache under the palace of the Purple Emperor. Pandorym exists in two distinct parts: its thought-breaking mind and its reality-ending body. Were the two to be reunited, Pandorym would resemble nothing from this reality. Pandorym's physical component does not truly exist as a body in the multiverse, but as a conduit to the incomprehensible reality of its home. It manifests as a 30-foot diameter sphere of annihilation, but no being, not even a deity, can control it, even using a talisman of the sphere. Like a sphere of annihilation, Pandorym's non-body destroys everything it touches, aside from deities. The ancient wizards hid Pandorym's body in a secret location in a distant part of the kingdom, far from the crystalline prison that holds its mind. The mind of Pandorym, even imprisoned, presents a subtle and sinister challenge. While it is imprisoned, Pandorym's consciousness is defined entirely by the crystals that trap it. The intensity of the prison's purple glow wanes and waxes in a rhythmic pattern. At times, the crystal seems to pull light into itself rather than radiate it. Occasionally, when it grows especially dark, a malevolent purple-red glow appears deep within. At those times, the alien mind seems to be aware and focused, if only briefly. Fortunately for the world, the crystalline prison is exceedingly difficult to damage. If released without a body to focus its energy, Pandorym's psyche spreads like a stain across reality. Its incorporeal emptiness stretches thin, and around its edges, it resembles a wispy cloud of lightlessness. Vaporous tendrils form and dissipate at random at this boundary. This irregular ball has no discernible front, back, or sides, and rotates slowly on a tilted axis. It seems to drift along, even when moving at top speed. Chill breezes, strong enough to make candles flicker but not extinguish, rise nearby. When Pandorym deigns to communicate telepathically, a dim glow emanates from its center. If released, Pandorym's consciousness is an imposing challenge for any being, mortal or immortal adventurer. However, if the crystal is damaged but not destroyed, a tiny fragment of Pandorym's mind might be released. Resembling a miniature galaxy of dark menace, even this shard is more than a match for the most powerful of beings, either mortal, undead, or divine. The Lost Empire's wizards and artisans constructed a magic crystalline prison to ensnare Pandorym's mind. When the deities obliterated the kingdom, they dared not destroy the crystal and release their doom. Instead, they sealed the prison away and eliminated all records of its existence. Still, the deities knew they could not keep the prison secret forever, so they created defenses around its location. Over time, the influence of Pandorym's mind has created undead guardians, the maddened remnants of those who failed to release it. Every mortal being that dies in the frightful complex surrounding the crystalline prison later serves in some way as a defender of the site, and every mortal being foolish enough to enter the complex so far has breathed its last within. The prison holding Pandorym's mind lies hidden beneath crumbling ruins and extensive catacombs. The ravages of time have created cave-ins and blockages intermittently throughout the complex. Excavations have attempted to link areas separated by collapsed sections. Not all those efforts succeeded, resulting in even more labyrinthine passages. To further confuse intruders, the deities established decoys throughout the catacombs, false prisons within completed but unused circles of binding. In addition to the natural hazards it presents, the prison complex has active and dedicated guardians. Original defenders remain, in the form of constructs. Intruders fell to the ancient guardians, perished in traps or caverns, or were destroyed by Pandorym's oppressive mind, and now patrol the complex as undead. They oppose any living creatures they encounter, whether in search of final rest, out of an abiding hatred for life, or simply as a release from boredom. At the heart of the complex is a 20-foot diameter circular room covered with sigils, runes, and incomprehensible glyphs of arcane design. A dark, oppressive chill leaks from the frigid void beyond the world, freezing the room's interior. The temperature never rises above extreme cold. Fire spells do little against the frigid cold of the complex. Non-magical open flames are snuffed out the instant they enter the chamber and cannot be relit within its walls. At the chamber's center floats a violet crystal. It pulses with an unholy darkness that seems to suck in whatever light enters the room. It does not shimmer, nor does it reflect or refract any light other than hues of purple, casting a sickly violet pall over everything, and most important of all, the mind of Pandorym is trapped within. Dearest reader, a final caution before we shelve this chapter and our fingers. Even when only partly loosed, Pandorym has shown a ghastly knack for commandeering any soul fitted with plangent prosthetics, or merely wearing plangent crystal. Think of the stuff as a sympathetic tuning fork for the severed doom. Once it sings, you dance. Worse, those thus enthralled die if separated from the crystal, and Pandorym can compel that very severing, like a puppeteer snapping his own strings to watch the marionette fall. You will ask, because mortals always do, what if we use the crystal, carefully? To which your humble guide replies, no. If found, treat plangent work as you would a live basilisk. Contain, ward, and consign to a sanctified destruction. The cultists who blaspheme reality by calling out to Pandorym and the elder evils often speak of a far realm from which these entities hail. In truth, there is no one place or space from which they come. There is the multiverse of things that are, and there is the multiverse of things that shouldn't be. Think on that, for you may need to be ready for when the end times come for us all. Let us recount the ancient Imaskari wizards one last time. They brought it, for they brought it and trapped it, and though many gave their lives to do so, they brought it to threaten the gods, which they did, and the gods responded. But the evil remains, imprisoned, biding, planning, seething, an elder evil that stirs in darkness.